So as I said, we had the true pleasure of having Sister Sharon Euart with us today. Sister Sharon is a Sister of Mercy who holds a master's degree in liberal arts in administration and supervision from Johns Hopkins University and a doctorate in canon law from the Catholic University of America. She currently serves as Executive Director of the Resource Center for Religious Institutes in Silver Spring, Maryland, and is a consultant to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops Committee on Clergy, Consecrated Life, and Vocations. She previously served as Associate General Secretary for the USCCB and Executive Coordinator of the Canon Law Society of America. She also taught in the School of Canon Law at the Catholic University of America. She is a former president of the Canon Law Society of America and is a recipient of the Society's Role of Law Award. She is also a former teacher and vice principal at the Mercy High School in Baltimore, where she had 9 very happy years. So, Sister Sharon, welcome, and thank you for being with us. And I will just take a moment to share my screen and turn things over to you.
Thanks, Kim. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be with you all. This is my second round with this because we did it last Wednesday night for a smaller crowd. But I'm really, I'm happy to be here because I think even though we're dealing with this virtually, it's an opportunity to reflect together on a very important and timely topic for Catholic educators today. And that is that the conflicts regarding church teaching, particularly around sexual issues such as sexual orientation, sexual identity, same-sex marriage, are becoming more numerous and more conflictual. These situations raise numerous questions and difficult ones regarding Catholic identity for MESA, for the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, as sponsor of MESA, and for the leadership of MESA Schools. Kim?
There we go, sorry. Oh,
Okay.
there we go, sorry.
I've been asked to address the relationship of MESA Schools to the Church from the perspective of canon law as it affects sponsors, leaders of MESA Schools, and church leaders in matters of church teaching and situations over which the Diocesan Bishop exercises oversight. Specifically, we will discuss briefly what it means to be a Catholic school, sponsorship by the Sisters of Mercy and the Institute's relationship to the Church, implications of this relationship for MESA, the authority of the Diocesan Bishop regarding the apostolic works in his diocese, and practical issues facing our schools today. I will just say that I will make these slides available to you, so that might be helpful in terms of avoiding having to take detailed notes if you wanted to. Kim? The 1983 Code of Canon Law reflects the treatment of Catholic education that's based on Vatican II's teaching in the Declaration on Christian Education. The canons on Catholic schools, and there aren't very many, they're numbers 796 to 806, recognize the goals of a Catholic school described in the Declaration as, for example, nurturing the intellectual faculties, developing the capacity for sound judgment, fostering a sense of values, and preparing students for professional life. The canons reaffirm the importance of Catholic schools as first and foremost within the Church's evangelizing mission in the world and as the privileged environment in which Christian education is carried out. I'd like to note particularly two canons that impact today's topics, Canon 801 and 803, and I'm going to read them to you and then comment on them. The first one is Canon 801. Religious institutes whose proper mission is education, retaining their mission faithfully, are also to strive to devote themselves to Catholic education through their schools, established with the consent of the Diocesan Bishop. Now, this canon is directed to religious orders whose mission includes the apostolate of education. It also commends religious institutes for retaining their commitment to education and recognizing the long-standing contributions of countless women and men religious to Catholic education. It also encourages religious to continue this commitment through Catholic schools, which are established with the consent of the Diocesan Bishop. The second canon is Canon 803, which has three sections that we will look at. This is a very important canon. The first paragraph describes how a Catholic school can be established legally, canonically. So a Catholic school is understood as one which a competent ecclesiastical authority, that would be a church authority, or a public juridic person directs, or which ecclesiastical authority recognizes as such through a written document. The second paragraph, we will look at each one of these separately, says that instruction and education in a Catholic school must be grounded in the principles of Catholic doctrine. Teachers are to be outstanding in correct doctrine and integrity of life. And the third paragraph, even if it is in fact Catholic, no school is to bear the name of Catholic school without consent of the competent church authority. 803 is an important canon in response to the question, what makes a school Catholic? It offers both internal and external elements that canonically define a Catholic school. First, its juridical, namely its juridical or legal relationship to church authority and the essential characteristics which constitute recognition of the school as Catholic. Now this is the canon I want to look at separately. Paragraph 1 describes three external ways a school can be Catholic. It must be under the direction of church authority, such as the diocesan bishop, and this would be an example of a diocesan high school, or under the direction of a public juridic person, such as the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, or it must be recognized as a Catholic school by church authority through a written document. MESA schools are canonically Catholic by the fact that they are under the direction of a public juridic person, the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas. Nick, Kim. The canonical bond that exists between church authority and the Catholic school, though essential to the Catholic identity of the school, is not itself enough to guarantee the school's Catholic character. So paragraph 2 of Canon 803 identifies two intrinsic characteristics or criteria. First, the commitment to base the formation and education experience on principles of Catholic teaching. And second, the expectation that teachers in Catholic schools be outstanding in correct doctrine and integrity of life. Next slide. Oh, wait a minute. The notions of right and correct doctrine and integrity of life do not refer to teachers of religion, because they are addressed in a separate canon, Canon 804. But rather, to the entire experience of the Catholic community, educational community, which in light of the gospel witnesses the Christian life, and for non-Catholics, a respect for church doctrines and morals in their teaching. Commentators on this canon describe the uprightness of life as meaning that personal, family, and social behavior is not in contrast to the precepts of natural law as interpreted by the Catholic Church. And it is from this understanding that many of the conflicts in the church with the church's teaching arises today. Next slide. Go back one. Catholic identity is at the heart of Catholic education and sponsorship, not as a limiting requirement, but rather as a life-giving connection, a participation in the mission of Jesus where faith and service intersect. It is not a static concept, but rather an evolving process that recognizes more than one way of being Catholic. And we can see in paragraph 3 of Canon 803 that no school can call itself Catholic without the authorization of church authority. Canonically, there are several criteria that could be applied to determine the Catholicity of a Catholic school. And here are a few. This slide and the next slide will list a few. There are others, but these are ones that are particularly obvious. That it be canonically established by church authorities such as the Diocesan Bishop, or as an apostolic work of a religious order, or having statutes reviewed for recognition as Catholic. That its internal Catholic values reflect fidelity to the Christian message as it comes through the church, and institutional commitment to the service of the people of God. And that there is a public affirmation and acknowledgement of the school's Catholic identity by way of name and documents. Other criteria include that its culture and performance embody compatibility with Catholic Church teaching. Examples of this would be in the mission statement, campus ministry, just treatment of employees, service for the common good. That it is bound by canon law requirements relating to pastoral care, which is generally related to parish outreach, parish activities, campus ministry, and the administration of property. And that it is subject to visitation by the Diocesan Bishop. I don't have the language of this canon here, but I want to read it to you because it's something that we don't talk about very often, or we don't even think about very often. But the canon says the Diocesan Bishop has the right to watch over and visit the Catholic schools in his territory, even those which members of religious institutes have founded or direct. He also issues precepts which pertain to the general regulation of Catholic schools. These precepts are valid also for schools which these religious direct, without prejudice, however, to their autonomy regarding the internal direction of their schools. So that's another piece of this whole situation of the relationship to the church, is the right of the bishop to visit. And we might think about what kind of occasions we do have the bishop visit the school. Next slide, Kim. What these examples of Catholic identity have in common is a link to the diocesan bishop. We can say if a work or ministry is not in communion with the diocesan bishop, it cannot be considered Catholic. For Catholic identity is achieved through communion with the church. Because of the diocesan bishop's role to oversee the communion of the diocese entrusted to him, and to keep it in communion with the church and the universal church, he exercises oversight of all apostolic works in his diocese. Consequently, the identity of a school recognized as Catholic requires that the school be in a relationship of communion with the diocesan bishop in the diocese where the school is located. This is an important concept. In other words, Catholic identity is not only evident in faith and values or name or symbols, it is also evident in its communion with the church through the diocesan bishop. An institution cannot be Catholic by itself. Catholic identity requires that it be in an ecclesial relationship beyond itself. The Catholic identity of our ministries is not an accident of history, nor is it merely one distinguishing quality among many others. It's where our faith and service intersect and bear fruit for countless others. It's a defining character. It is what makes a Catholic school uniquely what it is. The Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, as the canonical sponsor of the MESA Schools, ensures the Catholic identity of those schools. So let's look at what is the role of the canonical sponsor. The notion of sponsorship, beginning in the early 20th century, when religious institutes owned and operated their institutional ministries, was advanced in the 1970s by religious as their numbers began to decline and their priorities began to shift, along with Vatican II's call to religious to renew themselves by recovering and reinvigorating their founding charisms, and by the Council's recognition of Vatican II on the important role the laity play in the life and mission of the Church. External forces, such as liability risks and regulatory changes, also prompted changes, making it desirable to distance many of the Institute's institutional ministries from the Institute itself. The notion of sponsorship was a way of acknowledging the important role that founding religious wanted to continue to play in their ministries. And over time, sponsorship has become a commonly used term to describe a complex of structural relationships between religious institutes and church ministries. Generally, sponsorship involves three key elements: the use of one's name, the exercise of certain governance responsibilities resulting from the use of this name, and some form of accountability to church authorities. It has no precise definition or official status in either civil law or canon law. Rather, it describes an evolving concept with various understandings that range from those in which sponsors have minimal involvement in the oversight of the ministry to those that are totally controlled by the sponsors. But generally, the relationships of sponsoring religious institutes to sponsored ministries can be categorized in three broad categories: governance, influence, and advocacy. Sponsorship describes a set of relationships between and among sponsoring religious institutes, the sponsored ministries, and the church in the context of mission and ministry. Now, simply stated, sponsorship involves a relationship to the church. It refers to the oversight and guidance of a ministry undertaken on behalf of the church and through the lens of a particular charism. Through our sponsored ministries, we create an expression of church that is essential to institutional identity. Sponsors, such as the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, are the link between the apostolic work, MESA Schools, and the church, making it what would be called officially Catholic. Now, what does it mean for the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas to sponsor MESA, and what are the canonical implications of this relationship? First, let's consider the canonical status of the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas. The Institute of the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas was erected a religious institute of pontifical right in 1991 with the Holy See's approval of its constitutions. With that recognition, the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas became a public juridic person in the church. Next slide. Now, what is a public juridic person? How does it function, and why is it important? This is kind of technical, and I'm trying to make it as clear as I can, but it's a framework. That's what I'm trying to provide here, is the canonical framework for what we do today, what MESA does today, what the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas do in its relationship to the church, and why, as a result of that relationship, there are certain characteristics that are known today. So the concept of a public juridic person is central to the understanding of sponsorship. The legal system of the Catholic Church, like other legal systems, in order to afford continuity and stability, creates what are called artificial entities, comprised of persons or things known as juridic persons, and on which the law confers certain rights, like those of natural persons. For example, the juridic person has the right to make contracts, to buy and own property, to incur debts, to sue and to be sued, and on which the law imposes certain obligations. A juridic person is similar to, but not exactly like, a civil corporation in Anglo-American law. A public juridic person is ordered for a purpose in keeping with the mission of the church, which transcends the purpose of the individuals that are involved. A public juridic person is established by one of two ways, either by decree of church authority or by the action of the law itself to carry out a mission entrusted to it in the name of the church and in view of the common good. I want to just give you an example here. When the Sisters of Mercy had its constitutions approved in 1991, by law, it became a public juridic person. When a parish is established, by law, it becomes a public juridic person. When a seminary is erected, by law, it becomes a public juridic person. When a healthcare system is established as a public juridic person, it becomes a public juridic person by a decree of the Holy See, not by the law itself. So that I just want to set that as a little bit of a difference in terms of how public juridic persons are established. The next slide, Kim. A public juridic person has continuous existence unless it is suppressed by church authority in accord with the law. It is represented by persons, by natural persons, who are authorized to act on its behalf, either by law or by special statutes. Its property is church property, and it is governed by canon law. It participates in the mission of the church, and it's recognized as Catholic, and in turn, it must maintain communion with the church and is subject to some degree of oversight by church authority. The Sisters of Mercy, the Americas, is a public juridic person, and the sponsoring body of MESA. What does the canonical status as a public juridic person mean for the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas and then for MESA? As a public juridic person, the Institute of the Sisters of Mercy functions in the name of the Church. Now, this means that the activities or the apostolic works of the Sisters of Mercy are the work of the Church and not simply the work of the individuals who act on behalf of the group. Action in the name of the Church is not a private initiative of just any member of the Christian faithful. It requires being commissioned by someone with authority to extend this mission to act in the name of the Church. Thus, the work of Catholic education, entrusted to the Sisters of Mercy through its constitutions, is carried out in the name of the Church through the bond of communion. It means that the Sisters of Mercy, as the canonical steward, retains canonical responsibility for the schools of MESA through the Sisters of Mercy. And what that means is the Sisters of Mercy assure that the mission, values, and direction of the MESA system will remain faithful to the founding charism of the Sisters of Mercy and the Catholic nature and identity of the educational ministry. It also means that the Sisters of Mercy exercise certain reserved powers necessary to exercise its canonical responsibility with respect to MESA. In other words, the Catholic schools of MESA continue to be sponsored by the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas. MESA and its schools continue to have a relationship to the Church through the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, which by definition functions in the name of the Church. Next slide. Now, what does this relationship mean for MESA and the MESA schools and the local diocese where the schools are located? When the revised code was promulgated in 1983, one of its characteristics was an enhanced role for the Diocesan Bishop. Prior to this time, I would just say the Diocesan Bishop did not have much of a relationship to Catholic schools or Catholic hospitals or most institutions. They were sometimes present for the dedication of buildings, but their relationship was quite minimal. But they were given an enhanced role in the 1983 code. And canon law gives the bishop oversight in his diocese for all that pertains to the care of souls, and this would be parish ministry, public worship, and all other forms of the apostolate. So as a sign of unity for his diocese, he coordinates the apostolic works in the diocese entrusted to him in order to safeguard the unity and good order of the apostolate. With regard to Catholic schools, the diocesan bishop has two roles: oversight and involvement. His oversight responsibilities include the teaching of Catholic doctrine in the schools of his diocese, and the right to intervene if teachers of religion are found deficient regarding the correctness of their teaching, integrity of life, and competency skills. But besides his vigilance over the teaching of religion, he has a more general right to watch over and visit the Catholic schools in his territory, even those which members of religious institutes have founded or direct. And more generally, he is also given authority specifically regarding the ministries of religious institutes. For example, in the Canons on Religious, Canon 675 states that the apostolic action or the apostolic works of religious exercised in the name and by the mandate of the Church is to be carried out in the communion of the church. Sponsorship of Catholic schools by religious institutes is taking on new forms now and in the future. Practical yet important issues facing Catholic schools invite school administrators, boards of trustees, religious sponsors, and the bishop of the diocese to share insights and experience in a spirit of mutual trust and dialogue. For example, as the number of religious and governance roles decreases, what new structures for sponsorship is the Religious Institute considering? What are the implications of new sponsorship structures? How can Catholic schools maintain recognition by and accountability to the church? Are there open lines of communication between the head of a Catholic high school, the sponsor, and the diocesan bishop? Are there periodic conversations between sponsor of a Catholic school and the diocesan bishop? Is the diocesan bishop welcomed on campus? How can bishops better serve sponsored schools? How can sponsored schools better serve the local church? If our goal is to develop an open, honest relationship prior to a crisis or a conflict, the starting point is a place of understanding and trust. There are three current questions or issues that are particularly relevant for our topic today. How does the Catholic school receive its Catholic identity? How does the Catholic school lose its Catholic identity? And what is the appeal process? Let's consider each one separately. How does the Catholic school receive its Catholic identity? Now, we've talked a little bit about this, but I'll make it more applicable to Mercy. Earlier, we saw that there are three ways in which a school can be considered canonically Catholic. Each option is characterized by a relationship with church authority. If it is under the control of a church authority, such as a diocesan bishop, or one which is under the, or of a public juridic person, such as the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, or one which is acknowledged as Catholic in a written document by church authority, such as a private school under a lay board of directors. We also saw that recognition as a Catholic school is dependent on its internal character as an educational community, as defined in paragraph 2 of Canon 803, in two dimensions. First, that instruction and formation be based on the principles of Catholic doctrine. And second, that teachers be outstanding in true doctrine and uprightness of life. So how does a Catholic school lose its Catholic identity? The second question asks, under what circumstances can a school lose its Catholic identity, and what criteria can be applied for such an action? When a situation arises where there appears to be a conflict of rights between the diocesan bishop's oversight responsibility to coordinate the apostolate in his diocese and to apply the criteria of Canon 803, paragraph 2, and the religious institute's canonical responsibility for the internal character of its apostolic works, how should efforts to reach a solution move forward? Ordinarily, the goal would be to mediate the resolution at the lowest possible administrative level at a very early stage before the situation threatens the school's Catholic identity. However, we know that it is not always possible. Resolution of such a situation should involve consultation, cooperation, and communication among the sponsor, the school and board leadership, and the respective diocesan bishop. The bishop's assessment of the situation includes religious instruction, as well as principles that inspire the school's environment and the teacher's doctrinal and moral qualities set forth in Canons 803, 804, and 805. These matters are subject to the diocesan bishop's evaluation and his prudential judgment. If the bishop judges that either of these fundamental dimensions are absent from the school, he has the right and the responsibility to intervene in the situation and engage the leadership of the school and the canonical sponsor to explain the situation and, if necessary, request that it be corrected in accord with procedures established by the diocese. These are serious judgments on the part of the diocesan bishop and should be taken only after open and honest dialogue regarding how best to resolve the situation for the good of the community, the sponsor, and the faithful of the diocese. Next slide. The application of church teaching in specific situations involves a careful discernment of competing goods, the integrity of the ministry, respect for the dignity of individuals, the public perception of an action as faithful to church teaching. Each situation facing religious sponsors, school leaders, and board leadership, and church leadership is different. Since the diocesan bishop has the authority to determine what is or is not consistent with the church's teaching, sensitive and at times tense and conflictual dialogue can result. We know that dialogue is fruitful when it is a struggle to learn from each other and when we have the courage to hear what another might teach us. The relationship between sponsor, school, and board leadership and the diocesan bishop is critical in these situations. If a mutually acceptable resolution is not possible, the diocesan bishop, having studied the situation and engaged in dialogue with the appropriate parties, may withdraw the recognition of the school as Catholic in writing. If that occurs, is there an appeal process and how does it operate? What is the appeal process? The appeal process for removal of a school's recognition as Catholic involves what is known in canon law as hierarchical recourse. The process begins with a request by the aggrieved party to the author of the decree that he revoke or change the decree. If the request is denied, the aggrieved party appeals to the next higher authority. Here would be the hierarchical superior of the person who issued or authored the decree. For example, if a diocesan bishop removes the Catholic recognition of a school sponsored by a religious institute, and the sponsor believes the action was unjust, the sponsor should first ask the diocesan bishop to rescind the decree. If the bishop decides not to revoke the decree, the sponsor may appeal to the Holy See's Congregation for Catholic Education. Another example, not related to a school, if a member of a province of a religious institute believes that his or her rights have been violated by the provincial, the member can appeal to the Superior General of the Institute, and if unsuccessful, may appeal then to the Congregation for Religious in Rome. The appeal process may take several months, especially if the issue is a sensitive one, and it may involve consultation with other officials in Rome. In the end, the resolution can often be an effort to address the concerns of both sides of the conflict to reach an equitable solution. And I would use here an example that happened in the late 90s with the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits in St. Louis and St. Louis University Hospital. This was very public and it was written up in the newspapers at the time. St. Louis University wanted to sell the hospital and in fact had a buyer for the hospital. But they did not go through the canonical process of alienation because they believed that by civilly incorporating the hospital and putting lay people on the board, they did not have to. They were not the canonical sponsor. So Rome intervened, and what happened was Rome did allow them to sell the hospital, but they also had the Jesuits restructure their board of trustees so that there were the reserved powers with regard to canonical alienation of property. So in that situation, each of the sides, if you will, received something and also gave up something. I'd like to just conclude with a couple of comments here. As persons involved in mercy-sponsored ministry, you participate in various ways in the teaching, sanctifying, and governing mission of Christ and of the Church. You share in ministries vital to the Church and to the Sisters of Mercy that are part of the heritage and the apostolate of the Sisters of Mercy and the diocese in which they are located. In her address to MESA in March of 2017, Sister Pat McDermott, quoting our constitutions, said, Catherine McCauley founded the Institute of the Sisters of Mercy to involve women religious in the mission of the Church in the world. We commit ourselves to follow Jesus Christ in his compassion for suffering people. Education has always been at the heart of the mission of the Sisters of Mercy, and our mission has always been Catholic and mercy. In these times of challenge and uncertainty, may you reflect on these words from the constitutions of the Sisters of Mercy. The coordination needed today for the continuity of this witness and service of Catholic and mercy to Christ's mission will depend mainly on an attitude of mind and heart that is grounded in the mission of Jesus Christ and the Church and the Sisters of Mercy. Thank you.